Azim, thank you. Good morning to everybody in South Asia and good afternoon to most others. This is David Payne and it's a pleasure to talk with you this morning about SAP Application Modernization with AWS. A little bit later in the presentation, it'll be our pleasure to hear from Mr. Kamal Shah. He's the CIO and CISO at Larsen Toubro Infotech. Just a reminder, folks, that we have a Q&A chat window open and we have subject matter experts on hand who are very happy to answer your questions. So please make use of the console as we go along. IT application modernization is a necessary part of business, but let's explain what that means and give an example. In New Zealand, one of our AWS customers is Mercury, and they're a power utility. And they've recently completed a 2-year program to move core systems, including SAP, to AWS. And this has been part of a much broader digital experience program. One of the very tangible improvements in customer experience for Mercury consumers has been to make an Amazon Alexa service available, whereby Mercury consumers can now use their Alexa device to do things like check their balance, ask for power saving tips, or ask for more information about Mercury. But in addition to that great innovation that's relevant for customer experience, Mercury has also been able to embark on a cultural transformation and increase their velocity of innovation. Kevin Anglin, who's the General Manager of Digital Services, has been quoted as saying that their organization now works without barriers. They've reduced the risk of failure of large projects, but also they've been able to accelerate their velocity of innovation, now having delivered more than 20 functional releases since moving to AWS over the past 6 months. And that compares very favorably to their previous cycle of releasing 1 functional enhancement each month. IT application modernization is one of the drivers that customers have shared with us about why they move SAP to AWS. And sometimes we observe that customers come for the cost savings, but they stay for the innovation. And there are certainly customers like News UK or Utopia Incorporated in India who have been attracted to AWS because of cost savings, and they have realized those cost savings. But that's just one of the reasons that customers come to AWS with the SAP systems. Other adoption drivers include resilience and performance, and customers including Oppo Mobile have achieved much greater resilience and performance for their critical systems when doing real-time online order management with SAP on AWS. Other customers, including Midas Safety in South Asia, have been able to improve their security posture and compliance by moving SAP to AWS. There are other business reasons as well as rapid innovation that have attracted SAP customers to AWS. Many times we see customers embarking on business expansion, including, for example, going global, and that's a very prominent trend throughout South Asia and Southeast Asia. A little later on in our webinar today, we're going to hear from one of our customers who's successfully deployed SAP S/4HANA on AWS as a part of a much broader strategy for the intelligent enterprise. The AWS and SAP 360-degree strategy is neatly summarized on this chart. SAP has been a customer of AWS since way back in 2008, and now a number of SAP's cloud applications in their software as a service portfolio run on AWS. For example, Concur, SuccessFactors, and Hybris all run in part on AWS. And as a customer of AWS, we help SAP to simplify the operations of their cloud portfolio. As an SAP customer by now, I'm sure you're aware of SAP S/4HANA and SAP BW for HANA, and these are critical applications that can enable you to achieve the aspirations of the digital core. And you can deploy each of these applications on AWS in a couple of different fashions, including on a private cloud fashion. But we recognize that customers will want to move to the digital core and SAP S/4HANA at their own pace. And for that reason, customers can deploy SAP ERP and other applications with their choice of any database on AWS, and then move to the digital core when they're ready. If you'd like to extend the capability of core SAP applications, then you can do so with the SAP Cloud Platform, which is their platform as a service. More on that in a moment. And all of this 360-degree strategy is enabled by a community of APN and SAP partners who are well established in Asia Pacific. SAP and AWS have recently announced the general availability of SAP Cloud Platform, Cloud Foundry variant on AWS, including in the AWS Sydney region. SAP Cloud Platform is their platform as a service, and the contemporary version of this has a Cloud Foundry variant, and there's a range of exciting new services which you can use for innovation use cases. And these include, for example, building new and better user experiences, doing data and analytics in new and different ways, including data lakes, integrating with core SAP systems, and new functionality providing HANA as a service on subscription terms. In addition to that, there are other new exciting innovation capabilities around IoT, machine learning, blockchain, and more. These capabilities are all part of the new SAP Cloud Platform, which runs on AWS. And we also expect that customers will want to achieve the full potential of interoperability. Through Amazon APIs and other, it is possible to integrate the services that you consume in SAP Cloud Platform with native services inside AWS. And this can include, for example, machine learning, big data analytics, IoT, machine learning, and more. If you're new to Amazon Web Services, allow me to explain that AWS is a secure cloud platform, and it's comprised of more than 125 different services. And you can pick and choose the services that you need. With AWS, you only consume what you need, and you only pay for what you use, and actually you can pay as you go and start for free. And this makes AWS an ideal platform for experimentation. More on that in a moment. The services that are most widely used by SAP customers include our core services of compute, storage, networking, and databases. But in addition to that, and today in this webinar, we're going to present use cases about how SAP customers can adopt analytics, IoT, machine learning, and more. We also recognize that all SAP customers, in fact, all enterprise customers, typically have existing systems that they'll need to incorporate as part of a hybrid cloud. So for that reason, we have a range of services that support hybrid cloud computing, for instance, networking, identities, and more. I mentioned before that the core services most often used by SAP customers includes our compute platform, EC2. At the recent SAP TechEd in Las Vegas, we announced the availability of an expanded range of Amazon instances for the benefit of SAP HANA customers. Now, customers have a choice of both virtualized and bare metal instances that are available across AWS regions. And these include up to and including 12 terabytes for bare metal instances and up to 4 terabytes for virtualized instances. SAP customers have the widest choice of true hyperscale cloud instances for deployment of SAP HANA in AWS, more than other hyperscale cloud platforms. In addition, SAP has certified a wider range of applications, databases, and platforms on AWS than other cloud platforms. The newly available Amazon EC2 bare metal instances have a number of capabilities and features that are consistent and will be familiar for those who are already using Amazon EC2. So for example, these new bare metal instances run inside the same VPC that you define for your other instances. You can access these with a command line. They're API exposed, and they have the same Amazon EBS services that may be familiar to you if you're already using Amazon EC2 virtualized instances. So customers tell us that running SAP on AWS is fundamentally different in 4 respects. It's different than running in a colo. It's different than running on other hyperscale clouds. And firstly, customers tell us that they have achieved great improvements in performance. And the performance is either in terms of the user response, in terms of the database performance, or in terms of the speed at which they can perform key business operations, such as financial close at the end of a quarter. Secondly, customers tell us that SAP on AWS is different in terms of agility. Customers have cited that they've been able to accelerate their delivery and to increase their velocity of innovations. I gave an example earlier in our presentation about Mercury from New Zealand. This is also the case according to Del Monte. Third, customers tell us that SAP on AWS is different in terms of flexibility. With AWS, you can scale up and scale out your infrastructure according to the actual requirements of your application or the seasonality of your business. If your business conditions change, you can also change your mind and change your consumption of AWS. And fourth, customers tell us that they've been able to improve their security posture by deploying SAP on AWS. Every interaction that a user has with the service in AWS is logged. You can audit this, you can send alerts to look for inconsistent patterns or unusual behavior, and more. So consider AWS as a platform for application modernization. For sure, you can run SAP at the core and in a more automated and more innovative fashion. So the use cases that we support for SAP on AWS include ERP, that's both contemporary versions like S/4HANA and previous versions including ECC. You can run digital and customer experience workloads, including hybrid commerce on AWS. A whole range of analytics, including business warehouse, BPC, business intelligence, and more, can all run on AWS at the core. And then finally, a large range of SAP's databases, including HANA and ASE, and platforms, including NetWeaver, run on AWS. But in addition to modernizing your applications with SAP at the core, you can also support other innovation use cases with AWS. And in this webinar, we're going to talk a bit more about machine learning, about data lakes, and about IoT. So folks, it's now my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Kamal Shah from Larsen Toubro Infotech, and he's going to elaborate on LTI's strategy for the intelligent enterprise and the workplace of the future. Kamal, sir, good morning. Are you there?
Yes, I am, David. Good morning back to you as well as everyone on this call. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Kamal Shah, CIO at Larsen Toubro Infotech organization. And I hope everyone in different parts of the world is having a wonderful morning today as well. For next 15 minutes or so, I plan to walk you through, guys, with some series of slides around how LTI and AWS has partnered, if you will, in driving digital transformation at this organization. And then also talk a little bit more about our journey, if you will, around how the cloud enablement has become a pivotal part, if you will, around the transformation as well. So I'm assuming that some of you all might already be aware about who and what LTI as an enterprise does, but I'm going to take a brief moment to just give you a snapshot of who we are and what we really do. And so with that, LTI essentially is a group company of Larsen Toubro, which is a fairly well-recognized name in the Indian context as well as in the Asia context. L&T has independent companies, if you will, in sectors of finance and insurance, constructions, heavy engineering, shipbuilding. We also, as the group company, essentially are driving a lot of infrastructure related projects in building up smart cities in India itself as well as other parts of the world. And we work very closely with our defense segment as well. So it's a very elaborate portfolio of services and our enablements, if you will, in the geo-specific locations has been very varied. LTI, which is the technology arm of this group company, essentially is spread across different parts of our continents. We have presence in India, in Europe, Middle East, Africa, North America, as well as in the southern parts, if you will, of Asia Pacific. And predominantly, LTI essentially has resource alignments and talent pool alignments, if you will, and expertise in industries such as banking, insurance, energy, manufacturing, consumer and high-tech, media, and so forth. It's an organization which has 30,000 plus employees today, and it has been a vibrant organization. LTI also essentially positioned itself in the market as the digital transformation leader, if you will, or a partner that enables a transformation journey, if you will, in bringing physical and the digital experiences together. And that's what the enterprise does. The IT arm of this organization, which is the one that I am responsible for and I lead, has a very pivotal role to play in this regards, not just from an internal enablement perspective for enabling the organization, but what we do today internally is also something that we showcase back to our customers and to our prospects, as well as work very closely with our partners in making sure that those emerging technologies truly are being proven out and they are tested and validated, if you will. So that's the role that I play. That's where we are today, and it has been an exciting journey. If I can get the next slide, I would love to talk about what we really, how we started our journey, if you will. So as making of an workplace for future, if you will, and making it more intelligent, I think there are a few critical elements, if you will, that as CIO we need to really understand, or as an IT arm we need to understand. And first and foremost, I think, which is very consistent across all different industry segments, is the faster response to market. Every single IT service provider today, irrespective of whether you're internal or external or a partner, is chartered to just become more faster, more agile. And all of that essentially gets layered with the ever-changing business models. I don't think there is any industry out there today that is consistent and has been has the privilege of being that way for many years. And so the change in business model is super important. And of course, the requirements by the customers in having a more elaborative, enriched experience continues to grow as the physical lines between the personal world and the professional world keeps on getting blurred out. And finally, at the core of everything that we do, irrespective of the industry segments, it's going to be the employees. They require far more agility, far more flexibility, far many tools of their choices to be enabled for being more productive. And that employee engagement is super critical. And so that to me was one of our findings, if you will, around what our business was really seeking. And then to layer that out, we identified levers that are going to help disposition this broader charter of enterprise. And so we started with this concepts, if you will, of three bubbles that comes together. One being, if your technology, if the technology landscape is dated, then that needs to be changed, and which we call it as a digital core. But to enable digital core, you need to have a digital infrastructure in place. And the digital infrastructure essentially requires extreme scalability, if you will, at a price point that makes it materially viable. And so cloud becomes the first choice, if you will, around that. And then you also need high performance. And once again, cloud comes as a good answer to that requirement, which is around the compute power needs to be vary with the workloads that you want to process. And when we couple both of those together, essentially, we are looking at a digital fabric which optimizes enterprise around standardization, simplification of processes and workflows, modernizations of application, as well as having an ability to run operations in an autonomous way. And once we have those pictures in place, essentially we look at how we have high-speed platforms which essentially deliver business KPIs, and the overall design continues to enrich for ourselves. So that's the making of an intelligent LTI as a workplace of future, was something that we worked upon as part of this transformation exercise. If I can move to the next slide, I will then go ahead and elaborate what essentially today exists at LTI. And this is the picture that I wanted to share with you guys, that at LTI, we have an element which is powered by Mosaic, which is our own platform, which once again sits on AWS platform, which essentially enables us to bring in artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, IoT, and analytics capabilities. And then it services our need as well as our strategy, which is what we call it as LTI 2.0. And the digital core that I referred to on the earlier slide is our SAP S/4HANA. And the cloud partner that we have chosen is the AWS platform, if you will. So this enablement that we have today is it's a foundation to what we as an enterprise are looking at leveraging, if you will. And so we rebuild our core with this technology stack. And based on this technology stack, we service the needs of our enterprise and functions, including the likes of HR, finance, procurement, supply chain, as well as customer experiences planning, spend, and employee engagement. The platform of AWS is extremely scalable, as well as it allows us extreme computation. However, that said, what it also enables us very seamlessly is in other areas of interoperability with other cloud partners. Just like every other organization or many other organizations, we run Office 365 for our communication stack. We also run SAP Concur and SuccessFactors, which is our SaaS-based solution. We have other cloud-hosted solutions as well, and they all work hand in a glove with the solution stack that we have enabled on AWS today. The program that we embarked on was the LTI crossover program, and there are different excerpts of this enablement that made it to a public release and news media as well. I welcome you all to go ahead and take a look at that if you would choose to, and it's available as well. But end all, I think this is where we are today, if you will, as an intelligent enterprise, which essentially powers every single requirements of our business in just-in-time with the most agile and seamless and swift way. If I can get the next slide, I will continue sharing with this group, what essentially we have achieved with leveraging AWS. So we do run SAP S/4HANA, which is our foundation platform, and from a process perspective, it enables our order-to-cash processes, our people supply chain, which is essentially nothing but the recruiting arm. It also enables our core HR around performance management, career developments, hiring, and so forth. And then we also leverage the same platform for our books of finance, which is the record-to-report process and procurement. So we do run truly our entire business process on AWS today. And with that, what we have really achieved today is, we have achieved 24/7 availability of infrastructure, and not in context to a static infrastructure, but truly a dynamic one, where depending on the needs as well as the utilization, we ebb and flow on this platform. We have extreme agility because we have few requirements that have come in last couple of quarters, where the requirements were shared and socialized with us, which really did not have much of a lead time. In our erstwhile world, we would not be able to service those needs, but with the extreme agility that we have with the AWS platform of scaling up and scaling down, we've been able to truly leverage this platform. And then the elasticity and velocity of this platform helps us in building out applications and solutions at a lot faster speed and rate. The security part of it, which I think is super pivotal and important in today's world, is something which is a standard feature and practiced by AWS platform itself. And I think we could not be more happier about what we have experienced till date. The auto scaling and the other elements of transparency in build and first to install are just another set of features that have helped us in making sure that the solutions that we have enabled on AWS today are truly making material and tangible difference to this organization. So on the back of what we did was not just an IT infrastructure transformation, but in fact, our ability to leverage AWS have truly moved the dial and progress our strategy, as well as help disposition our business requirements as well. And I think this, to me, has been the pivotal role, if you will. I want to just take a brief moment and talk a little bit about the program itself, because there is so much that has been enabled by this program itself. And if I can get the next slide, then it will depict all the things that we have done today on the AWS. And here's just a quick snapshot of it. The crossover program that we have, that we've been embarked upon, and what we have delivered today, essentially ends up being one of the largest S/4HANA implementation on AWS. And as I just mentioned a few minutes back, the implementation covered different modules of SAP. And as you can see, it covers end-to-end all the modules, including, and I think what's kind of missed out on my side is also the BI platform. The BI platform also today runs on this stack as well. And it enables us with real-time capabilities, if you will, of going up against the DR instances. We have the SAP S/4HANA solution, and it is from an experience perspective, because we are having this flexible compute environment, we've been able to leverage a user interface which is more compute hungry, but that is only possible because of the infrastructure that we've been able to provision here. And then the scalable and the reporting structure, as I kind of mentioned earlier, is truly driving decision making, which is embedded in the transactions. We have dashboards today for our enterprise, which allows them with a forward-looking view. And as you can imagine, that all of this essentially requires crunching enormous data, and much of that requires just-in-time as well. And essentially, it puts a lot of pressure back on the infrastructure and the network. I think jointly with AWS team, we've been able to achieve all of that in a relatively shorter period in a seamless way. The value that we have achieved essentially is 40% reduction in processing time of our contract and project creation. So contract management and project creations have essentially dropped down. We've been able to close our book of finance a lot faster with the solution design and the infrastructure that once again powers these massive jobs during those cyclical runs. It has allowed us to do seamless integrations with our system of records, including the ones that is very foundational to an IT organization, which is timesheet and invoicing. It has allowed us to provide better user interfaces. And then finally, last but not the least, it has enabled us to simplify our process structures and align with BSAP, then away from SAP standard template. And all of that is essentially possible because the user, the end user today, now has to make a choice between, do we really have this high compute, high speed environment at disposition, or should we go with extensive customizations which may not really make the functions work in a more agile way? And so I think our infrastructure today has helped us in positioning the solution in a different way that brings the conversation back to what is more important versus just getting belabored by these old dated processes and practices that people are not really able to willingly come out and change. And I think this kind of just brings in a fresh layer of how to operate. As I just mentioned earlier in my presentation today, where we have automation and analytics and other enablements, which have essentially been an accelerator to this program. It's essentially a Mosaic platform. And the Mosaic platform also today runs on AWS, and so it gives us a seamless way of enabling solutions in a faster way. Our accelerated UI as well as Smart Analyzer helps us to identify our needs and truly provide the best experience back to the users, if you will. Last but not the least, from a realization perspective, which I will talk to you about in my last slide, which is the next one, you will see that what we have essentially done is we have taken the first step and the right step in this direction. Our solutions today allows us to have an integrated view of all the different processes, right from the point in time when the customer gets identified as a prospect, all the way till the time we log that into as a customer, and then thereafter the contract and project, and deliver to those commitments. We have real-time availability of cost plans, revenue, as well as real-time information around what the profitability of each of engagements are. We have optimized invoicing process, wherein by it reduces our revenue leakages. Last but not the least, it also helps our resources fulfillment on projects, critical projects across the world, be dispositioned in just in time. On the right of it, what you are able to observe here today is we have shortened our procurement time, if you will. The typical PRPO process, which essentially used to take some time, based on the touch points around budgeting elements that had to be taken place. This solution of in-memory computing with AWS in a secure way allows us to truly bypass much of those legacy ways of working. Our compliance levels have always been high, and with AWS, it continues to be at that level. And our ability to integrate with our systems, which is the legacy systems, has definitely not been impacted, and so we continue to build on that. Last but not the least, every enterprise essentially needs to make sure that their workforce continue to be enabled with productivity, and that's what we have achieved. I think all in all, our journey with AWS has been remarkable. Yeah, not only during the early stages of doing the assessment, but also during the project lifecycle and thereafter. And I can't thank enough for the experiences that I've had. What I would love to do is give you guys an opportunity to reach out to me if you think there is something that I can be of help, and feel welcome to let me know. But with that, I'm going to turn it over back to David and the team to take it here from you.
Thanks, Kamal, for sharing LTI's innovation journey on AWS for SAP application. It's quite encouraging to have you as a customer as well as a valuable partner. Good morning, everybody. My name is Harpreet Singh, and I am SAP Solution Architect at Amazon Web Services. For the next couple of minutes, I'll be sharing with you how customers on AWS can integrate their SAP application with AWS services and enhance or extend their SAP applications. So I'll be focusing on three specific scenarios related to big data, predictive maintenance, and machine learning on the edge. So let's first understand what is big data and why organizations need it. So in a simpler word, big data is data that is voluminous, being collected from different data sources, including both structured as well as unstructured data. And the data is getting collected, stored, processed, and analyzed in a very short span. That short span could range from a day to a near real time. So essentially, big data has three characteristics: volume, variety, and velocity. Now, why organization need it today? If you look at the stats on the screen here, a survey conducted by Aberdeen suggests that organizations that implement data lake for meaningful insight and data-driven decision, they outperform similar companies by around 9%. So these leaders, basically, they are able to use the new age analytics, capabilities of machine learning, from the data that they source from different sources like clickstream, social media, Internet of Things. And this helps them to identify and act on opportunity that can grow their business. And of course, retain the customers as well, along with boosting the productivity and maintaining their devices in an informed way. Now, if you compare it with the way traditional SAP analytics looks like, so SAP analytics used to run on SAP Business Warehouse system, where the data is collected from different SAP and non-SAP systems. But this method of analytics had few issues. For example, it was optimized for relational data sources. Business Warehouse cannot store unstructured data. It's primarily for relational data sources. It's tightly integrated with SAP ecosystems, which means that if you have data from non-SAP applications, you need to build your own schema, and a lot of complexities around that. And third, it's difficult to scale for those of you who would have worked with BW, so as the data size on BW system starts to grow, it needs additional help via BW Accelerator or BWA, the way it used to be called. The purpose of that BWA is to prepare those operational report in a reasonable time span. Then the fourth point is around the schema design. You need to design the schema well in advance. You need to know what kind of data will be stored in business warehouse, and you need to design the schema upfront so that data can be loaded into a business warehouse system. However, customers today want to store and analyze the non-relational data that is being sourced from different sources. As I mentioned previously, it could be click streams, it could be social media data, it could be from external research agencies, or it could be even connected devices from Internet of Things. So these new sources, they generate data at very high volume, and it can scale up to exabyte in size. Storing and analyzing this data in a business warehouse system is next to impossible. So what's the solution? How can we solve this, right? The answer to this question, let's first understand what is required, what SAP customers need today. So they need the capability to combine data that is being generated from SAP as well as data that is already there in data lake. The data is coming from different data sources, and combine these two different data sets to build analytics on top of it. They also want to store the data that is coming from different applications in its native format. The capability to transform it when needed, rather than deciding those transformation schemas or different ways of ETL upfront. The data should be stored in its native form first, and then based upon the application need, it needs to be transformed. And besides, as the data is coming at a high volume, it needs to be stored in a space where it is cost effective, it's secure, and it's highly available, of course. Now, what's the answer to all these questions, right? Data Lake is the answer to all the requirement that we have from these applications today. So now let's explore a possible design pattern for SAP related data lakes on AWS. So a data lake essentially consists of 5 stages in a pipeline. The first stage is ingest. So in the ingest stage, data is received from different data sources, which could be SAP, non-SAP, and stored in its native format. Then in the second stage, which is transform, this data gets transformed to a form which is required for the application to consume. Now, the data that is received in the ingestion form remains as is, while a copy of it is created in the transform phase. So you will always have that source of truth intact and available for you to use. And if you need to do a transformation again, it can be reused. The third stage is analyze. So in this stage, the transform data is analyzed to see whether it will be able to meet the business requirement. Maybe you already have data that is transformed, so you would like to see whether that will meet the requirements or not. If not, then you have the source system, source data still available, and it can be transformed again to meet the needs. Now in the fourth stage, which is publish, once the data is identified is the right data for consuming, it gets published in the publish stage. So that publishing can happen at different data targets depending upon your specific need. And then finally, the consume stage, where different tools and application consume this data. But where this data comes from? So of course, we will need data sources. And as I mentioned previously, the data sources could be SAP or non-SAP applications. Now, there are many AWS services that help you at each stage of this pipeline. I will not describe all of these services, that will be too much for this session, but essentially I'll touch base on the ingestion stage. Now in the ingestion stage, if you see, we have 2 services listed here, Amazon Kinesis Data Stream and Amazon Kinesis Data Firehose. So both these services can ingest the data from variety of data sources, which can then be stored in an S3 based data lake. For data extraction for SAP applications, it can be extracted using non-SAP tools, tools that are available from SAP like Business Object Data Services, SAP PO, Or there are third-party tools like from Informatica, Talent, Attunity, as well as Brightflow that can be used to extract SAP data to data lake as well. But what if you don't want to extract the data from SAP? Rather, you want to consume the data that is available in data lake in an SAP system. So we have an answer for that as well. So the way it works out is we have services like Amazon Athena, Amazon Redshift, which provide an ODBC based interface and ODBC driver. And using this driver, we can enable integration of Amazon Athena and Amazon Redshift with SAP HANA based systems. So I'll give you a demo in a while on how we can integrate Amazon Athena with SAP HANA based applications. So moving further, let's talk about Amazon Athena because that's where the demo is based on. So to give you some context around that, so Amazon Athena is an interactive query service that makes it easy to analyze data in Amazon S3 using standard SQL. So you don't need to be worried about provisioning any infrastructure because it's a serverless service. You just place your data in an S3 bucket, which can be in various formats. For example, it can be CSV, it can be RWO, it can be Parquet, it can be geospatial data. So these different data types can be stored in an S3 bucket, and you just need to point Amazon Athena to that bucket. And then you can fire SQL queries to generate the result from these various data sources. And you pay just for the queries that you execute. So there is no infrastructure that's provisioned. So you pay for the queries that gets executed with Amazon Athena. So if there are no queries getting executed, of course, then there is nothing to pay on that side as well. Another point to note is Athena, as I mentioned, is very easy to use. You just need to point to an S3 bucket, and only requirement is that you need to have an understanding of SQL, how SQL can be written, and then you just need to fire those queries. So here is an architecture for federating queries from SAP HANA to Amazon Athena. So if you see on the left-hand side, we have different data sources, and data from these data sources is getting collected or stored in an Amazon S3 bucket in its raw form. And then in the second stage, which is the transform phase, as I described, AWS Glue ETL is used to convert this raw data into a transform data depending upon your specific requirements. And once the data is transformed, the Glue crawlers understand the data structure. They build a data catalog out of the data that is stored in an S3 bucket in a transformed form. And then on HANA side, you just need to have that ODBC driver installed, integrated with Amazon Athena, and can create remote data sources in SAP HANA systems for Amazon Athena. So let me quickly go back and show you how it all fits together. A demo is always better than 1,000 words. So if I show you here, I have, maybe I'll show you the data source first. So this is an CSV file, which contains dummy e-commerce data for different consumers. So it has invoice number, the part number that particular consumer has or a user has ordered, the description of that particular object or part, the quantity that was ordered, the day on which it was ordered, and the price per unit, the customer ID, and the city of or the country of the customer. So this is a sample e-commerce data which is stored in an S3 bucket. Now if I go back and show you the console, so this is a CSV file that I was talking about earlier, and it has close to 500,000 records in a 42 MB file. Now, as I mentioned, this data can be stored in different formats. So CSV is an example, but you can store data in RWO, in Parquet, and geospatial formats, and different forms in which the data can be stored. Now, once this data is transformed, so let's assume that this is a transformed data and we have converted it to the requirement that we have specifically. We need to crawl this data with Amazon, with AWS Glue. AWS Glue, we just need to point it to a specific location of an S3 bucket from where it understands the data type. So it's a CSV file, so it recognizes it as a CSV file and builds a table based upon the data. So if I click and show you, so it has already understood the schema, and build this table structure from that CSV file. So once this metadata has been built, so we just need to point Athena to this data source, which is e-commerce data, and then you can fire an SQL query on it. For example, if I execute it quickly, so it's a table e-commerce underscore data, and the results will be executed. So the query will be executed on that CSV file, and you will see the results here. It's the same data that I've shown you earlier in the CSV file. So all you need is understanding of what SQLs are and how to build the SQL, and then you can get the data from S3 bucket. Now on the HANA side, let's see how we integrate it. So once you have done, all that needs to be done, as I mentioned previously, is installation of Athena ODBC driver on SAP HANA systems, and then you need to create the remote data source for Amazon Athena. For example, if you see on the screen, I have already created this remote data source for Amazon Athena, and it has the details for the table that I've shown you in a while. Now, once this remote data source has been created, you can create it as a virtual table by just right-clicking on it and create add as a virtual table. So once this table is added as a virtual table, it will be added to a schema. For example, I have already added in system schema as a virtual table, virtual underscore e-commerce underscore data. You can execute SQL statements on this. So let's say I want to open the contents. So that will fire an SQL statement, select top 100,000 from this particular table. So now this results, the query was executed on Athena, and the results have been sent to SAP HANA. Now, if you look at this structure, we don't have customer name in this CSV file or the data that is stored in S3 bucket. What if I have my customer master in SAP HANA system? So if I open this table contains the data for different customer ID and their first name and last name. So let's say I want to combine this customer master with the transactional data that is coming from that e-commerce side. So we can combine a SQL statement which collates the data from both the table and presents the results. So here I am looking for the last name and first name where the records already exist in the virtual table. So here, if I fire this execute statement, so now it is joining the results from virtual table as well as the physical table that exists in SAP HANA and giving me the results. So now the use case is definitely, you can build analytics on top of SAP HANA using your existing tools while combining the data which is available in Data Lake. Okay, so let's move on to the next section. So next, I want to talk about predictive maintenance. So now there are two maintenance scenarios generally commonly used in industry. One is called preventive maintenance, and the second is predictive maintenance. So preventive maintenance is more around when you do maintenance on a regular basis on your equipment or asset. For example, our vehicle or car, we do regular service, right? Even if there is no problem with the car we are driving or the vehicle we are driving, we do a regular service on the car so that it doesn't stuck anywhere, right? So that's more of a preventive maintenance. So we are keeping it in a good condition so that it does not create any problem. While predictive maintenance, on the other hand, is based upon the important statistics from the asset. So we monitor important statistics of the asset or device on a regular basis, and if there is any anomaly detected, for example, the monitor data is outside a range, then we assume that it's going to create problem in very near future, and then only we plan for maintenance. So predictive maintenance is based upon the monitor data. We monitor the asset on a regular basis and then perform maintenance as required. Now, as I mentioned, predictive maintenance requires continuous monitoring. So this data needs to be generated by some sensors on the device, right? So this generated data is then pushed to AWS IoT core service. So we use AWS IoT service where the excuse me, where the data from different devices can be sent to the AWS IoT platform. So in this scenario that I'm going to describe, we will be using prominently two services, AWS IoT and Kinesis Firehose. So AWS IoT enables to easily and securely connect billions of devices. You can gather data with AWS IoT and also run sophisticated analytics in real time while the data is being streamed to AWS IoT service. But what about Kinesis Firehose? So that's a managed service which allows you to capture and load streaming data into different data stores and analytical tools. So it can capture data from AWS IoT, use various SDKs, as well as different Kinesis agent that we provide to gather this data. And the data can be stored in Amazon S3, Amazon Redshift, Elasticsearch, as well as Splunk. So we have a connector, a native integration with Splunk, where the data from Kinesis Firehose can be stored in Splunk directly. So here is an architecture for a solution that we built with our partner LTI. The use case is around transformers. So consider a utility company which has electric transformers all over the city. And they run these transformers, of course, 24/7 to provide electricity to millions of consumers. So their goal is to minimize any downtime on those transformers, right? So transformers, they have sensors, and they regularly send data about various important statistics of it to AWS IoT service. So these statistics could be what is the temperature of the transformer, what is the primary voltage, what is the oil temperature, what is the oil level in the transformer, and so on. So these values are reported and sent to AWS IoT service, where it is checked for predefined thresholds. If the threshold is, if they are within the threshold, which basically means the transformer is performing perfectly fine. But if there is any anomaly and the value reported is outside that specified range, a Lambda function gets triggered, which invokes an OData service running on SAP NetWeaver Gateway, and that creates a maintenance order automatically in an SAP backend system. So in a way, you are doing preventive maintenance and creating a maintenance order which will be acted by some engineer, and they will take care of the problem as soon as the maintenance order is generated. On the Splunk side, the data once received from AWS IoT can be pushed to Kinesis Firehose as well, and this data is then used by Splunk to create nice dashboards. So you can see a real-time dashboards of what the current statistics of different transformers are. You can drill down to a specific transformer, look at the currently reported values and historical values as well. So it's a very good use case to do predictive maintenance. Finally, let's look at another cool innovation that we have done. So Amazon Deep Lens and how it can be integrated with SAP for different machine learning on the edge scenario. But before we go there, let me first describe some of the services on which this solution is based. Some of you who would have seen this AWS Deep Lens, it's a device that enables developers or data scientists of all skill sets to learn machine learning skills. So it's one of the first of its kind in the world where all these skills, the video, the machine learning is all combined together in one device. So another service that we use is AWS Greengrass. So Greengrass is a service that extends AWS onto your devices. So they can act locally on the data that they generate while still taking advantage of the cloud for elasticity. So Greengrass takes advantage of your device for compute and storage and extends them to cloud for management, updates, and the storage of the cloud. So the Lambda function are executed locally on the device. So in this case, that device is AWS Deep Lens, as I described previously. So the Greengrass is installed on the Deep Lens device, where the Lambda functions are executed, and machine learning model is also executed as part of the Lambda execution. The third service in this scenario is SageMaker. So SageMaker is a fully managed platform that enables developers and data scientists to quickly and easily build, train, and deploy machine learning model at any scale. Now, if you see traditionally, the machine learning model creation and execution has various steps. So you need to collect and train the data, and you need to collect and prepare the training data. Then you need to choose the right algorithm for your data that you have. And then in the third stage, you prepare that training environment where the training happens on the data source, and then you train and tune the model. And finally, when the model is ready, you deploy it on the production, and then you run it in the production environment. So it's a very complex process, and any developer can lose hope of learning machine learning if they need to do all these steps. So SageMaker makes it easy across all these steps to train, deploy machine learning models in production at any scale. Now here is an architecture that I quickly want to describe for this particular scenario. So in this scenario, we want to identify the characteristics of an object. So that object is video recorded by deep lens, and from that video stream, it extracts the image of the object and identifies what that object is. And once the object is identified, the different characteristic of this object, which could be what is the product ID, what is the price of this, who is the supplier for this particular product, and what is the current stock level that we have. So these characteristics are pulled from backend SAP system. So the way it works is that now, because deep lens has to understand or identify the product, so there is this model that you train on SageMaker first for the different objects that you expect the deep lens need to recognize. And once the model has been trained, you deploy that trained model on deep lens. So deep lens will then run that model, identify the object. Once the object has been identified, the data is pushed to backend SAP gateway systems as a JSON payload, and based upon the response received back from the backend system, the UI for the user is updated, which displays the various characteristics, as I mentioned previously, the part number, price, the stock level, and so on about that project. So that's pretty much it from my side. So we discussed about 3 specific scenarios in this part of the webinar, and we discussed about using data lake for SAP application, predictive maintenance, and machine learning on the edge for SAP applications. So with this, I would hand it over to David to provide next steps and some closing remarks. Over to you, David.
Thanks, Harpreet. And thank you earlier to Mr. Kamal Shah from Larsen Toubro Infotech. Kamal, so congratulations on your success. Thank you for sharing your strategy for LTI to become a more intelligent enterprise and to implement the workplace of the future. Folks, just a reminder that we have the chat window open, and you can ask your questions and get answers from subject matter experts. So please take advantage of the Q&A console on screen. By now, perhaps you're thinking about how to get started, and we have additional customer success stories online where you can find an organization that looks a bit like your own organization and learn from their experience. AWS is a great platform for doing experimentation with a low cost and risk of failure, and then you can scale up when your project is successful. So we actively encourage people to start proof of concepts, and we have expertise and funding programs and accelerators to help you get started. Some of those accelerators include using the AWS Marketplace, where you can discover, consume, deploy, and pay for solutions as you go via our online store. Keep in mind also that the SAP Cloud Appliance Library has a range of software appliances that you can deploy rapidly to AWS. The SAP Cloud Platform, Cloud Foundry version, is now available on AWS in many regions, including AWS Sydney region. AWS Quick Starts are a plain English guide that explain how to do an end-to-end configuration of AWS to support a workload, including SAP. And then there is also the codified infrastructure to automate the process. We recognize that every enterprise customer, every SAP customer, for example, is very concerned about cloud economics and TCO. Our framework, our models, and our data sets are available for customers to help them make a more informed decision about the TCO of running enterprise applications the way they are today, plus what they would be in the future should you choose to deploy on AWS. And then we can help you look at value realized after you move. If you're thinking big and bold, then I'd encourage you to take a look at the AWS Migration Acceleration Program. The program includes a number of artifacts, such as a cloud adoption framework with 6 pillars therein, both business and technical. We also have assets including automated landing zones, which rapidly creates an environment for you to deploy multiple applications. And there are other artifacts, including the Migration Readiness Assessment with a specific variant for SAP workloads. The APN SAP partner community is comprised of these organizations who are well established in Asia Pacific, and including those partners you see at the top right corner who have attained the APN SAP competency. These partners provide a range of services, including assessment, implementation, migration, and managed services. And there are also technology partners who provide a number of solutions for extending and innovating around SAP and on AWS. If you're curious to learn, I'd encourage you to take a look at these links here, and there are a range of digital training offerings available. So folks, thanks very much for joining. Thanks for your interest in modernizing SAP applications with AWS. Again, thank you to Mr. Kamal Shah from Larsen Toubro Infotech for sharing his experience, and congratulations again on his success. Please do complete the survey. We're really interested in your feedback on our content. We'd like to know what you thought. And if you'd like to consider a proof of concept, please do speak up. So to those in South Asia, good morning. Thank you very much for joining. Good afternoon to most others. Have a great day.